We have officially heard from speakers on all 4 of our pillars, but now it's time to hear from leaders in each of our markets, along with an educator as we double down on the importance of providing exposure, access, opportunity, and equity in our world, and especially in our industry. So this year's professional panel is being moderated by Gail Peterson. Gail is an Executive Vice President and Chief Marketing Officer at ECOLAB. She leads the company's global marketing, communications, and brand development initiatives. And she's on the board of the Sun Country Airlines and a member of several Black executive groups, as well as champion for DE&I at ECOLAB. Gail earned an MBA from Harvard Business School and a bachelor's degree from Princeton University. Joining Gail on the panel are our amazing professionals, so I'll introduce them in alphabetical order. We have Peter Kim, President and Chief Creative Officer at MKR, a mid-sized independent advertising agency with offices in Milwaukee and Indianapolis, an executive with over 25 years of experience. Peter's work has been recognized by organizations such as The One Show, the Webbies, and the Addies, and Peter was awarded the 2021 AAF Silver Medal Award, celebrating creative excellence and responsibility in areas of social concern. Dr. Michael V. Walker, a Bush Fellow recipient with a PhD in organizational leadership, policy, and development. He is an unapologetic advocate for Black students and works towards reducing the belief gap in schools. Dr. Michael is currently the Associate Superintendent for Minneapolis Public Schools and the founder and CEO of Critical Questioning Consulting. Sam Bonds is an award-winning creative leader with over 20 years of experience and a lifetime of creating. Sam has helped drive business from world-class brands like AMC Theaters, AT&T, Red Lobster, and Chevrolet, to name a few, and is currently the SVP Creative at Barkley in Kansas City, Missouri. Tina White, a leadership expert who's passionate about elevating teams, building collaborative relationships, and strategically operationalizing agencies to design and deliver solutions that truly matter to clients and consumers. Tina has held CEO roles at Shinebox and most recently Ciceron, and has been in the Minneapolis ad world for over 2 decades. Okay, got them all. Please join me in welcoming the professional panel to the stage. We're excited to have them close out today's speaker set with topics that cover all 4 of those pillars. Again, exposure, access, opportunity, and equity.
All right, well, hasn't today been fantastic? Really good, right? And Dr. Carey just, wow. I really liked what she had to say, and then I decided I hated her because we're after her. So the bar has been raised, my friends. I think we're gonna do it. I need to see the confidence in your faces. We got this. They got pearls of wisdom. So of course we have the 4 pillars from the BrandLab. We'll start with some questions about those pillars. So obviously this room is a beautiful room full of marketing and advertising leaders, and we want this room one day to be 4 times bigger, right? And that first step is all about exposure. So Sam, how did you get exposed to this industry so we can do that more so with others?
Absolutely. So can y'all hear me? Yeah. So for me, I was exposed via the neighbor of a friend from college. So not necessarily in college, but a buddy of mine. I was a graphic design major at Howard University way too long ago. And a buddy of mine who graduated a couple years before me, he'd given me a kind of life-saving call. He called me at my job that really sucked. I was a graphic designer for a management consulting firm. Their key client was the Pentagon, so my primary colors in which I was drowning were navy blue, olive green, and yellow. Dealing with those clients, I hated it. I was so ready for something else. I didn't know what that was going to be. He called me and said, "Hey, I went to this advertising school in Atlanta, and you should go there because I know you hate your life." So that was my intro. He had the experience of having gone to a private school for high school, and so the parent of one of his friends from school was an ad person. So that's how it unfolded for me. Yeah.
I love it. So the tips are, everybody find the friend that's most
Look.
upset about their job and pull them into the, I like it. It's a low bar. I feel like the industry can beat it.
There you go.
It's a good plan. But also in your answer is the importance of connection, right? And so I think that's a theme we've heard today. So next question to my friend Peter here. I'm gonna put together access and opportunity because they're so linked. And once you get into the industry, obviously you need those things to grow. So can you share access points and opportunities that you had, or maybe even ones you didn't have because you maybe earned them, but people didn't see that you earned them, and share the learning there?
Sure, I love listening to Joy Marie earlier. For me, opportunity isn't random. It comes to people who put themselves in favorable positions. And listening to Joy Marie talk about all the work she put in is just inspiring. I think the challenge is for young people who are trying to get into the business, you know, like for example, me, my dad was not a vice president at JP Morgan. We didn't grow up on the Upper West Side of Manhattan. We just didn't have the Rolodex. And I think that is where that inequity happens. And so really it falls on the people in this room, it falls on us to serve as the ones that are gonna help lift each other up and provide those networking opportunities for young people. In my career, early on, it's interesting, I don't know if in my first year in the business I had a mentor or even a sponsor. I had a lot of supporters. One person in general, or in particular, it's interesting, he was an advocate for me, but just in one-on-one conversations, he would share willingly all of his thoughts. And it's interesting, he was an attorney giving me free advice, which doesn't happen. But I was in an ad agency in Detroit. We were a car agency. And way back then in 1995, please don't do the math, I was a traffic coordinator. So for those in the business, today we have project management software. In 1995, you had Peter Kim. And so I would route job folders up and down the stairs. We were a very big agency, a lot of steps. And I actually lost 10 pounds in my first year at work, just going from department to department. One of the stops on the route was the attorney, so that he could proofread and check all of the legal disclaimers for lease offers, right? And as he was checking, you know, these things over, we would have small conversations. And he asked me, he's like, Peter, so you're gonna be a traffic coordinator forever? Like, what are you actually gonna do with yourself when you grow up? And I said, well, Mert, I wanna be a copywriter. That's really what I wanna do. I thought I'd get in the back door of an agency through traffic. And he said, well, that's great. Who have you told? I said, I don't know, I told a couple people. He said, don't tell a couple people, tell all the people. And it is like Dr. Carey had said, you have to use your voice. You have to self-advocate. Don't be a shy little wallflower. Let people know what you want. And then when you're given that opportunity, go own that, right? And show them what you're made of. So for me, that's opportunity, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And I love that, because I do think we do have to say what we want, put it out in the world. And it's okay if it changes too over time. But then on the other end, when somebody shares that with you, do something about it, right? So everybody in this room, regardless of your level, can do something about it. So that's great. All right, Dr. Michael Walker, you're up, my friend. You know, you are driving equity for all the learners in Minneapolis. I mean, that's amazing. It's an incredible legacy you're leaving. But equity can feel different to an individual. So when you think about yourself, how have you seen equity or inequity in your own kind of career?
Yeah, that's a big question, right? The first thing
You're
I'll
the one
say
with the
is,
PhD, so you get it because you have a PhD. That's the way this is going to
that
work.
don't mean I got the answers, right? That means I know how to look for answers. But I'll first off by saying, being in a room full of advertisers and marketing, like, I gotta really show up today because you all are good at selling things and I'm an educator, we don't really do it that well. We should, because we're in front of students all the time who we need to be selling our education to, so I'll be good, I think. But to answer your question, really thinking about that, it goes to my guy, I call him my guy, James Baldwin, is I can't believe what you say because I see what you do, right? And too often when we're looking at equity, people have the right language, they say the right things in meetings, but when it's time to have action, it's invisible. They don't show up, right? Because when you're doing equitable work or doing equity work, you have to be willing to give something up. right? What are you willing to give up? What are you willing to risk on behalf of others that may not be in that space? And so when we think about that, right, you have to be really intentional about the work that you're doing. And so I'll just kind of share a little bit about the work that I have done in Minneapolis. Working in Minneapolis, I have been the inaugural director of the Office of Black Male Student Achievement, which is really about designing programming to change the academic outcomes for Black males. And as we know, across our nation, we have issues around their success in the academic field, right? So you look at test scores, GPAs, graduation rates, right? All those different things. They're typically at the lower end of that. And then when you look at referrals out of class, suspensions, they're going to be at the top of that. So we already see inequity right there, inequity in that space right there. And so my role was, how do I change the system to ensure that we're not perpetuating that system? All right, hard as hell to do, right? Because what we're really trying to do is change mindsets and beliefs. As you heard in the intro, they said that I'm worried about changing the belief gap, because I don't subscribe to the adage that there's an achievement gap, right? There's not an achievement gap. Our Black males, our Black students are able to achieve. It's what are the conditions that have been set in our school system to allow that achievement to occur, right? And so that is about what are adults doing in those spaces. And too often we see adults who don't believe in our young people, right? I'm gonna say that again. We have adults who don't believe in our young people. And they don't say it outwardly. It's not like, oh, I don't believe in that child, but we have coded language that we use to show our disbelief in our young people. We talk about, well, look at the communities that they're coming from. Look at the socioeconomic status. Look at they're coming from single parent households. All these different things that we put in place to say, I don't necessarily believe that that child can make it. And so when you think about that, that's a lot of work to try to undo. And so it's really about, how do I get people to think differently about what their beliefs are? And really it's about investigating myself, right? So the work that I try to do is having people look in the mirror versus looking out the window. It's easy for me to say, oh, look at what they're doing out there. They're not doing anything for Black and brown students. Well, first of all, I got to hold up the mirror to myself and say, Michael Walker, what are you doing every single day to be an unapologetic advocate for Black students? And if I can start off in that realm, if I can make the change and the adjustment, then I can hold others to that. But I got to be willing to listen. I got to be humble to know that I will make mistakes. When we think about our systems, white supremacy impacts us all. As a Black man, I can uphold white supremacy, right? So I got to be mindful of that and be willing to check myself on those instances and have accountability partners to help me with that.
Well, I think that's great, because the marketing and advertising space, as we all know, is a system that needs changing, okay? And I like this idea of the belief gap and what we each in this room can do to drive that change. And it's, as you said, it's the language that people use around those who are maybe not successful, or however we define it. I also think it could be the language we use around those who are. Sometimes we'll say, well, they're really lucky. Sam's a special guy. He's a one of a kind, right? You're not gonna find another Tina out there. And that's a problem. That's perpetuating that belief gap. So thank you for that. See, it's a good thing you have a PhD. And you used your words great. I don't know what you're talking about. Okay, so Tina, obviously as leaders, well, everybody in this room, we're trying to drive inclusion and equity in our thinking, our actions, our communications, especially for those of us here. And the reality is, a lot of times my organization will turn to me and think I have the insights for all different people. I make mistakes. I'm sure you've made some mistakes. The issue isn't the mistake, it's if you learn from it. So would you be willing to share a mistake that you've made as you've gone on this learning journey, or one that you commonly see other leaders make in organizations?
Sure. So I was getting really excited about this question last week, because I thought, oh yeah, I've got a list of all the mistakes I have endured in my career, and I can't wait to share them. And then that reflection made me look at myself. I've been in leadership role now for several years, and some of those same mistakes that I remember, I actually did. So in this position, when I looked at, particularly inclusivity, it's like, I know what that is, I know what that looks like, and I'm gonna make it happen. Do you hear all the I's in that? I did not pull in a team. I did not ask the right questions. I did not actively listen. I assumed from my own bias that I could make those decisions and see that through. And then I also did another big thing. I said it and I forgot it. I left it there. I said, it's just gonna be a thing. It's like a bullet point or a process. Well, it is not. So for me, taking this whole opportunity made me look at myself and kind of how I was approaching it, and recognizing that it's not trying to fit it into your culture. It is disrupting your culture and looking at all the diversity, the backgrounds. It's evergreen, it's constant. And if we don't touch it and make progress with it, it dies on the vine. So for me, that was, I do still have they did make me the head of DE&I when I was like 23. So obviously that was a mistake, but.
Yeah, but that's their mistake. We'll blame it on them. No, but I love that the importance of reflection and looking in the mirror, I think it's a leadership lesson for all things. But this idea of, and I think it was Dr. Carey said, that's not how we do it here. That's not the way we work. That's not the culture. Well, what I hear in your answer is that's when we should all say, ha ha, we're on to something, right? Because we need to disrupt that culture. So thank you for being willing to share some of your mistakes. Okay, we've talked a lot about DE&I today. I think we all know in this room the ultimate goal is belonging, right? And we've all heard the diversity is being at the dance, inclusion's being invited to dance, equity is having your song on the playlist, and belonging's when everybody dances to your song, right? So it's important. One of the challenges with belonging is all of us would pick a different song to put on that playlist, right? It's a very personal thing. And so, Peter, would you be willing to share moments in your career where you've really felt like you belong and why?
Sure. Belonging it's a big idea, isn't it? And whenever we meet with clients, we always want to know, like, what does success look like? Help us visualize what a job well done looks like. And as it relates to belonging and recruiting people, belonging is when a person can show up and be 100% their authentic self, not 10%, not 50%, not in certain rooms they're this way, in certain rooms they're a different way. Just bring your whole self. And for us, it's something we work at. It's also, by the way, something we talk about a lot. I think talking about it manifests it, it makes it real, and then you hold yourself accountable because you said it in a room. Just a small sort of tactical thing we do. The creative department does monthly department meetings. And one of the things we adopted early on was every month we would have two people and they would make a presentation on the thing that inspires them. Has nothing to do with advertising, nothing to do with our clients. Sometimes it's a book, sometimes it's an artist, sometimes it's a film or a TV series. And they take us through slides about what they find inspiring about that. People love these presentations because people are able to show up with permission to just show us inside their heart and what they're feeling and what inspires them. And that feels great. But it's also, I think, representation makes people feel a sense of belonging. Just a quick story. Last year we hired a young woman fresh out of college, like literally she was in college sending out resumes. And she told me that when she was putting together sort of her list of agencies that she wanted to reach out to, she had thought about changing her first name. So she was born in Japan. So naturally she has a Japanese name. When she started putting together her resume for our agency, she saw that one of the partners, president and chief creative officer, was an Asian guy with the last name Kim. And she thought, I wonder if in this space it would be okay for me to just use my actual name. Fast forward a year, she is a star. She's one of our best people. And honestly, like, it warms my heart and makes me feel slightly emotional when she tells me that story, because I think that's ultimately what we're all trying to achieve here.
Yeah, and that is a heartbreaking story that somebody felt like they had to change something so fundamental like their name in order to belong. And I love the idea of the kind of inspirational moments, because we're in business and it's go, 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 go. And somebody could argue that that's not a forward driving action, and yet it's one of those things, go slow to go fast. So that's fair. And I'm sure somebody said Peter Kim, not just a song. I'm
I wish.
sure somebody was like, I am super inspired by Peter, which is great. Sam, you know, this concept of belonging, I think over the course of a career evolves as well. What differences do you see and how you think about belonging earlier in your career versus later? And that's not me calling you old. That's just me saying you're a seasoned professional.
I don't know. I'm getting the twinge of old. No, it's a very different thing. I think what community is to you when you're coming into the industry versus when you're more seasoned, as you say. You're looking for you have different needs. So community, when you're first going in, means, all right, I want people who feel the same level of anxiety that I feel. I want people who are coming.
No, let's see, let's get them. See, now
Thank you,
that's inclusion right there. That was something special.
PhD. So you have those different needs, and being able to support those various levels in an agency becomes important because those experiences and having peers that share those experiences will always matter because everyone is moving toward some different group throughout your career, and you want to feel like folks are having that same experience, and you certainly feel like the folks above you don't understand your experience. But what they can understand and relate to, and hopefully they draw from that understanding, is that you're alone. You immediately feel alone, and so creating opportunities for like experiencing people to connect, and wherever they are is super important. And you always hear about leadership groups or leadership programs. They're there for a reason. You have to transition into something, and you have to feel like you have a cohort who understands that transition. And that's the same throughout your career when you're starting or more seasoned as well. So I think being prepared to support those experiences will never end. That's ongoing. It's an ongoing process.
Yeah, and I think that idea about having a cohort, probably as you go up, that cohort might need to become even more external than when you're more junior in your career, but it's important at any level.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Okay. Anybody else we got some good tips on belonging. Anybody else? Dr. Michael Walker or Tina, would you like to add any other thing on belonging, or shall we keep going? Oh, well, you do now. Nice try. See, this is what they're doing. Yeah.
No, I think you hit it on the head around belonging. And when we really think about belonging, I'm a counselor, right? So that's how I got into education. And so I wasn't a traditional teacher, but really about how do we create the spaces and conditions for that to happen. And, you've been talking about it all day, but what we have to do, I really will keep harping on this, we have to make intentional actions to make sure people are feeling like they belong. We can't just allow it to be happenstance or, like you got to really make an act. You got to slow down and make an act so that folks feel belong, which means I got to, again, reflect. I got to make sure that I have different perspectives at the table to ensure that we are open to all perspectives, to all voices. Too often we get into these groups or organizations and we just kind of keep going, because we're trying to move fast. And so we got to be really slow with that to make sure that we hear the voices of the people so that we can do right by people.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. Even in my job, I just think with communication, sometimes I'll just be like, that doesn't feel right to me. And I can't explain why, but if people will listen to that, that's probably touching on me not feeling a sense of belonging in that moment. So I think that different voices at the table, clearly very important. All right, I'm gonna, go ahead.
A little bit. Can y'all hear me?
I mean, really? They don't like
Oh my
you.
goodness.
It's like, don't silence Sam. He's got stuff to say.
I will
Just
not be
keep them
silent.
all. We'll just,
The good doctor just reminded me of an example of that. Even in my current agency, Barkley in Kansas City, that's a plug. Hey y'all. I think when you said doing the hard work, doing the work, and making those concerted efforts, one of the things that I've experienced, and I feel like many of the folks in our agency experience, is that the forums are created, and so that's part of the thing. Feeling like you don't have to be the one to create the forum, but that a forum exists, and that you kind of just, or you know that you're going to hear about people who aren't you. You're going to hear about experiences that aren't yours, and you can expect it, and it's not going to be a surprise, and it'll be a chance for you to learn. And I think that for a community in general, that's always good. Just that cross-pollination of experience and background, and me being able to understand what folks who aren't like me are feeling now in the environment that I contribute to, that's powerful. And it's also just community building in itself. So.
Yeah, that's absolutely a great tip. And I think it also helps with maybe some majority people, when they see somebody who looks like you, Sam, not know the experience of a person with a different experience, or even another Black man, they get that this is tricky for everybody. And so that's important. That's great. So one of the things I love about marketing and communication is we have such a powerful platform, right? We're controlling the narrative of culture. We're controlling the narrative of our corporations, what people see, what representation looks like out there. So I actually want to hear from each of you, and I'll start with you, Tina. What's one piece of advice where you think this group, regardless of level, again, I don't think it's a level thing, how they can bring more inclusion into their communications, their actions, and their thinking?
Thanks for having me start.
Well, I can't start with Sam because that's where Mike's going to die.
I know, his mic is, it's rigged. Boy, that's tough. You know, I think, again, I kind of touched on it earlier, active listening is really important. That is creating a space where there's no judgment, there's no interruption. You're actually paraphrasing back what you heard so that the person you're speaking with understands that you understand them. And then putting that into active work, right? So, and we do it every day. We talk to people every day, but the active listening part and then taking it to the next level and the next level, I mean, that would, I try and do it. It's hard. You catch yourself wanting to interrupt or get them there faster, or, oh yeah, I totally relate. But active listening is really important, I think, in those daily interactions and touch points that help cultivate inclusion.
I think that's great. Maybe after Dr. Carey, we call it active hearing, right? So you actually hear what the person's saying before you drive into that action.
True. Yeah.
TM, I just trademarked that. So just saying, don't want to see it out there on social without the TM, okay? I know how y'all work. I gotcha. Peter, what about you?
You know, I think one of the things that frustrates a lot of people is when we just talk about it and don't actually walk the walk. So one of the things, and by one I mean many, one of the things we do is we build it into the process of the work we create, right? And when you talk about the responsibility we all bear as marketing people, that's real, right? We decide what faces show up 30 seconds on television or on the billboard off the expressway. So we build that into even the brief. For a lot of our clients, and we're blessed with really great clients, they understand that, you know, in 2023, it's important for a brand's values to overlap with their audience's values. And what your audience is thinking a lot of times is the stuff that we're all talking about today. It is just part of the discussion and the conversation. So thoughts of inclusivity and representation work themselves into our creative briefs and into the work we do on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah, and to Dr. Michael Walker's point, it can't be this side thing. It needs to be, you know, to change the system, you've got to integrate it into the system. So very good point. Who has the active? Y'all just pick who goes.
We're sharing the microphone
All right,
at this
good.
point, so it's
Okay, go.
hopefully that works.
Go,
right?
Professor.
Right?
Let's hear the words.
I'll say this, and because you hear me talking about intentionality, and this will be a plug for the BrandLab, is when we talk about inclusivity or being intentional. I don't know the data or demographics of your workforce in marketing and advertising, but I know that the BrandLab was very intentional about partnering with Minneapolis Public Schools at South High School to start to, got some claps out there, that's what's up. To really include and get more perspectives in the field of marketing and advertising, right? So if you want to get different narratives out there, you got to bring those people to be behind the camera, to be in those meetings, to be in those spaces, to share that narrative so that it can be seen on screen or in a song or jingle. I don't know y'all profession, so I'm just making up these words. If
Jingles are a little 1980s, but that's cool.
oh.
That's cool.
Well, I'm trying. I'm at a marketing conference. I'm trying, right? So I think that's the piece. The other piece that I know that the BrandLab has been working on is being intentional about working with the Office of Black Student Achievement to further be intentional about bringing a different perspective and opportunities. I'm sure they're in the very early stages of that conversation, but that's about being intentional, right? So I'm not just talking about diversifying it. I'm actually going to spaces where I know diverse students are, young people are, to get them interested in the profession so that they can make a change in how the narrative of branding and marketing is being displayed on the camera, on the screen, with the jingle. I'm gonna say it anyway, with the jingle, right? So for you all, when you think about inclusivity, what are you intentionally doing, right? I know that, again, I'm gonna harp on this all the time, is that we are in a microwave society where everything has to be done in 30 seconds, 45 seconds, or make these split decisions. Well, if we know how the brain works, our brain is always looking for shortcuts to make decisions, right? And as you all are in marketing, you know that when you put certain things on TV or certain things in the media, it makes us think certain things, right? So our society has created an image and perspective around certain people, Black and brown folks, that's typically negative, right? So if we're making these fast decisions in our workplace, our brain is gonna do the shortcut way, and those biases and stereotypes show up every time in those spaces. So if you're not slowing down in your thinking and in your processes, you will keep perpetuating the same thing that has been going on for centuries and years around negative images and stereotypes around Black and brown folks. So that's what I would say, slow the hell down as you're making those decisions so that you can change those narratives intentionally.
Well, and you know, you get to go slow to go fast, right? Because we know that diverse work performs really well when we get it right. So that's a great point. Okay, let's see. Is it gonna work, Sam?
I'm trying not to break this. And I'm gonna ask you to give me the question in its purest form one more time.
You know what?
I'm gonna ask you to give me the question one more time.
Oh, okay. Well, you know what? Because of time, I'm going to move on to the last question with you. So we're going to all four do it. And it's just, what is one, I mean, this is a room busting with talent, right? And they're here because they want to change the system. They're here because they want to change our industry. So what's one piece of advice that you would leave them with?
Wow. I think Antonio, our keynote speaker or fireside chat speaker, hit on networks are so significantly important. And an example I'll use to also plug an incredible thing that I'm proud of with my agency is that my very first partner in the industry, creative partner, Tom Demetrio, we were partners in 1999. And then I saw him at his wedding maybe a couple of years later. And then he and I kept in contact sporadically throughout the 20 or some odd years. But in one of our most recent conversations a few years ago, he'd connected me to Barkley. And so I ended up going to Barkley in 2020, where he and I and a few other really smart people came up with the Barkley Creative Accelerator. And when you think about intentionality, it was a commitment that the agency made to being a lead, to taking a lead role in the industry in terms of inclusion and diversity. And we created a program that not only educates young people of diverse backgrounds, but it pays them to learn. And that's significant because it's one thing to remove the barriers of just access and exposure, but to make it something where money, which we all need to make, isn't the key barrier. I thought that was a powerful statement of commitment and being intentional that excited me and still does today.
That's great. See, you were a pioneer before we didn't knew it. Peter, what about you?
I really like, Sam, what you had said. I think, as a person that does a lot of hiring, one of the biggest frustrations is when we have an open position, like let's just say for a graphic designer, we are not getting the kinds of applicants we want. We want a more diverse pool to choose from. So I think the challenge has to be solved further upstream. So getting to younger people, letting them know that there's decent money in this thing that we call advertising, and you get to have ideas and get paid for it. I don't know if young people all know that. Certainly not the people that maybe have, different backgrounds. So for me, that's the big thing. It's something that we talk a lot about. It's something that we work at when we hire interns. We're constantly thinking about this. I mean, after today, go connect with Dr. Walker. He's got access to all of the high schoolers here in town, and they just need to know that this is an opportunity for them. There's a possibility for them here. From the agency perspective, though, a nightmare scenario for me would be a creative department filled with all of the same types of people with the same backgrounds, they went to the same types of schools. There's no diversity in thinking. It's incredibly dull. And I can't imagine the horrific ideas you would get from, 25 people that all were brought up the same exact way. It's a nightmare. So let's fix it. I mean, this is the room where that happens. And, if all of us make a concerted effort to address that, seems doable, doesn't it, Dr. Walker? He's giving me a look.
I don't know. He just got I don't know what it is. You just got yeah, I did. He's ready to have you come over and do some kind of speeches. It'll be good. What about you, Dr. Walker? And we'll give Tina the final word.
Yeah, I would just say for me, it's about being, I don't know if I want to say willing, but being comfortable with the uncomfortable. And if you're not really understanding what I mean, is that if we're really trying to make change, and when we think about learning and growing, is what we tell our students all the time. When you're learning a new math strategy or scientific equation, right? You're going to be uncomfortable as you're learning to grow in that space. So as adults, we shy away from being uncomfortable because we have the privilege to do that, right? But if we really want to make that change, we have to be okay with being uncomfortable in spaces so that we can learn and grow and bring those different perspectives into the space. Because if not, we'll just keep hiring the same people that we're used to hiring, that look like us, that think like us. And now we are, again, perpetuating the same thing. So I would say really start to get comfortable with being uncomfortable in spaces.
That's great.
Or not. Don't get comfortable. Always be, to some degree, a level of uncomfortable. I think you all have to give each other some grace as you're really focused on this and building this. As everyone has said, it takes time. It takes strategy, it takes expertise, all the things we do out for our clients and our customers. We've got to bring that level of smarts and intellectual property and experiences and all of that, bring that in and do the same thing you do for any one of your customers or clients for yourself. And then again, I think it's okay to be constantly uncomfortable. I mean, I am right now. So, I think the reality is that's the only way we're gonna constantly evolve and grow. And then, like I said, just give yourself a little bit of grace. The intention is there, the action is in place, and then just see it through, because we know we can do that.
Well, those are some smart words at the end there to wrap us up. We are gonna take questions, right? Do we still have time for? Okay, I'm gonna start in an effort to be inclusive with our virtual audience, but I have literally no idea how to find out what they want to ask. So this might be my last moderation at the BrandLab. Does anybody, it's like not on a screen. Okay, we'll pivot, what? We'll pivot to the room then. Sorry, virtual friends, we love you, but I have no idea how to hear your voice. So any questions for people in the room? Yes, please. Oh, I think, oh,
As a young professional coming into the industry, I've heard a lot about, or I've heard the phrase, we don't have to reinvent the wheel. And I'm always the person that has big ideas and always want to bring it to the table. But when I hear that phrase, it silences me in not bringing that idea. So my question is, as a young professional, how can we reinvent the wheel and bring our ideas to the forefront?
that's a great question. Who wants it?
I'll say, you can, some stuff you just gotta ignore. Like, we're in an idea industry, and I don't know the context that was spoken in, but hopefully it wasn't in the creative department. Or, I don't know, yeah, I'm not sure what that is, but always bring your ideas. Always, you are your ideas. They have to be expressed. Now, there's different ways to express them that I'm certain that would potentially draw out the conversation and don't reinvent the wheel oftentimes, and then how you hear things too, that may have something to do with it. Usually when it's spoken, it tends to be the type of thing that is not necessarily pivotal, that we have a novel approach to it each time. And then so that suggests that we have to look for opportunities to where new thinking there is fertile ground for new thinking, and those new ideas do matter, and they are the space that we can be dynamic. There are certain types of clients or processes that consistency really is the benefit. It is beneficial to be consistent. And so not every aspect of our internal functions or our client relationship deliveries are necessarily in need of dynamic change. But wherever possible, if you have great ideas, they will be appreciated, even if not initially thought to be of great value. Keep bringing your ideas. When somebody hears a great idea, if they told you that they didn't want to hear it at first, when they hear it, it should be, or tell somebody the fuck else. I don't know. Right. But you gotta get.
That's right.
On that note, I mean, it's not fair to say persistence, but I think what is the data fact? I'm sure somebody in here will correct me, but I think on average, we need to hear it 7 times before we really retain it. Or sometimes you're met, like he said, I mean, you could just change who you're talking to or asking the question of, but it's your idea, and just keep saying it and just keep bringing it to the table, because it takes on average us average humans about 7 times to grasp that.
That's right. I think we just convinced her to leave her company. So I hope they're not a big sponsor of the BrandLab. It's cool. This is really going off the rails. Do we have another question? Yes.
Hi, thanks for the insights thus far. From like a leadership perspective, how do you all call out and hold your peers and leaders accountable when you see those issues and that inequities and folks not being included or given that space?
It's a good one. Want to go?
Yeah, that's a great question, right? I think you heard me say earlier about how do we have accountability partners and relationships in our organizations that can help when those things come around. But I really think it's about how do you create the climate and culture that you can challenge or questions people's thinking in a way that is being heard, right? I think about it in schools. We have many students that are in front of us, and you have to talk to each student differently. You have to respond to each student differently. So sometimes you can call people in, is what I like to say. How do you call people in? And what I try to be is curious with my frustration or anger about what some people may say sometimes. And I'll just use a phrase, hey, help me understand why you said it that way. Right? So now you just invited them to come into a conversation that they may not be aware of what they even said. Because sometimes we don't know what we're thinking or what we're saying because our biases may just be showing up. But now we invite them into a conversation. Now they have to kind of go through their thinking and process of, oh, why did I say that? Why did that come out? Now, y'all may walk away from each other and still not agree, but that person will walk away and have to say, I gotta think more about that. And if you all know about the philosopher Frantz Fanon, cognitive dissonance, his theory around cognitive dissonance is that we want people to get into a space of cognitive dissonance. That's where you got these two competing ideas and one will win out. So now we get away from the unconscious implicit bias, and now we're aware of our decisions and choices, and then we can decide which one it is, right? So that's what I would say.
Yeah, the power of a question. I think that's great advice. It's probably the best advice to end on before happy hour, because not only did we have to follow Dr. Carey, we're preventing people from beverages. So I hope you all enjoyed, Sam, Dr. Michael Walker, Tina, and Peter. They're amazing. I hope you guys can stick around so more people can ask you questions, and it's been an honor to be up here with you guys.